I'm just sitting here in Spain on a really beautiful summer Sunday afternoon, and I was rereading St. Teresa's third chapter on the third mansions, the third stages of prayer. And the first thing that struck me, she gives 7 signs of someone who's in the third mansion. It's a perfect description of my mother and father's generation, and my grandfather's generation, and generations of Irish people before that who kept the faith. These 7 signs. For instance, she talks about people in this third stage of prayer, this third match, trying to avoid venial sin. Well, looking back at my parents, I never remember them once telling a lie. Neither my mother or father. And certainly not a mortal sin. I never remember them stealing anything. Very, very honest. And so on. So that was the first sign. The second sign, to love penance. Well, that generation of Catholics, I'm talking about Ireland here, but I suppose right across the Western world you might have found the same thing with your own parents, if you're the same generation as me. I'm talking, well, I was born in 1955, so that kind of generation. They love penance. They took Lent seriously. They really tried. They took Friday series with fish. It's hard to tell about penance so much, but there were penitential in their lives. My mother never drank her whole life. My father never drank either. My mother never smoked. Of course, there's no question of taking drugs, and TV only ever come in late. So it was a whole different world, you know. Spend hours in meditation. It's they loved the rosary. My mother had a prayer book I found after she died, and she it was very, very simple prayer group, but it was wrapped up in sellotape. She told me after she got married, she had 10 children, that she went to an old confessor and says to the priest, I don't find time to pray now. And the priest asked her about her family, and she told him about her children. She says, your children are your prayer. But I remember my mother used to often sing hymns while she was working. She had a great love for the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And my father was constantly talking about church matters. So did my mother. They were very interested in the church and all that went right in the church. It goes without saying they went to church every Sunday. Works of charity. Again, that would have been hidden from me, but my mother was very open-handed, you know, and you had so many societies doing charity in the parish, you know, loads and loads. You had the Credit Union, the Housing Association, the Apostolic Societies, so many, you know. Charity was second nature to Catholics, really. Using their time well. Their children, they didn't have much choice about using their time well. There wasn't, I don't think they had much spare time. And another sign that the 7 signs St. Teresa gives is of being well ordered in conversation and dress. Well, yeah, perfect, you know, perfectly describes them. Never heard them cursing, never heard them use foul language. And another one, they'll run their household well. Well, they had to run their household well. I mean, the 7 sons, 3 daughters, you know, they had to be tough, you know. In a sense, there's no time to be anything else but good Catholics. But I'm not saying my mother and father were anything special. They got that whole generation of of Catholics and generations of Irish Catholics before that. That they lived the faith. You could tell they were Catholics, and not just Catholics, but Protestants too. In that generation, I mean, in the city I grew up in Belfast, and on Sundays when I was young, Protestants especially observed the Sabbath. I mean, all the shops closed. You don't even go out and you don't even go out and cut the grass for your garden, and the Bible, reading the Bible. The Sunday was really set apart, and Protestants kind of looked down on Catholics for that, because we took part in sports and that on Sundays, and I didn't. But there was that you could identify that someone was a devout Protestant or a devout Catholic, and this reminds me so much of the 7 signs that St. Teresa gives here. St. Teresa goes on to say that it's an opening to the higher states of prayer, but this is the branch on which the little bird gets set to fly off. But it reminds me of something I've read about Bill Clinton in the 1992 and 1996 presidential elections. He had studies initiated to see if the Catholic vote was any different from the rest of society. In other words, the Catholics vote in black. Are they all the same? Or are they apart from the rest of society? In other words, that he had to cater for Catholics. Were Catholics different than anybody else? And really, he found they weren't. He didn't have to worry about Catholics. I think that's what St. Teresa. I'm not just picking on Catholics in America here. It would have been even more so in Europe. I mean, basically what he discovered was Catholics really weren't, by this stage, 1992, 1996, Catholics weren't really any different in their behaviour than anybody else. So it didn't really matter what Bill Clinton did. He wouldn't, no matter what issue, say abortion or whatever, it didn't really matter. Catholics would still vote for him. And so in the election in 1982, 44% of Catholics voted for him. And the election in 1986, 53% of Catholics voted for him. And you see that going along all throughout the Western world. It doesn't matter if politicians support abortion or support euthanasia or support anything that's against Catholic, the official teachings of the Catholic Church. Catholics will still vote for them, which means that they're no different than anybody else. And what's the good of being a Catholic if you aren't any different? If you can't be set apart from anybody else, what's the point of being a Catholic? And we see that with the Vatican at the minute, that the Vatican wants to make us part of the world. It wants us to worship these values and put aside the values that set us apart. But even if you look at say Orthodox Jews or the Amish or maybe some of the stricter Protestant sects like the Jehovah's Witnesses, you can see that they're set apart a little bit or more than a little bit from the world. And if you're not set apart a little bit from the world, well, what's the point of it? It's only like being a member of a social club or a golf club. And so this is the starting off point. So you would expect that becoming apart from the world in prayer and your means of behaviour and what you do and what you don't do. A good example of that would be, as I mentioned earlier, keeping the Sabbath holy, to go to church on Sunday. And then if you start to go to church every day, you're setting yourself apart even more. Your days kind of revolve around this. I met a lady the other day, a few months ago. She started going to Mass every day, and one of her friends said to her, why are you going to Mass every day? You don't have to. The church doesn't force you to do that or make you do that. Should Sunday not be enough? And she said to her friend, I'm going to Mass every day, not because anybody's forced me to do it, but because I like doing it. It's a good thing to do. And this is what's, I think this is what's setting aside the third mansion. Love's drawing you on it. It's not a matter of rules and regulations. But St. Teresa mentions this here. She says it's like the psalmist says, like the deer yearns for running streams, so my soul is yearning for you, my God. And I think that's what sets my generation, or the generations alive today, from my parents' generations. Everybody really was doing these things. Nearly everybody, they were keeping at least the outer forms of religion by doing these things. But nowadays, very few people do this here. So you're not doing it as my parents done it, only because everybody else done it, or with everybody else. You're really, really, really apart if you do these things now. Uh, I would say there's far more virtue to being in the third mansion now. It's a far better thing. It's a far better thing to do. And I think since Teresa mentions here is that God doesn't know us anything, I mean, we're not deserving of a pat in the back for all this. Everything we're given, the grace to be able to do this here, to do all these things is all grace. It's all a gift of God. Without God's help, we couldn't do this. And St. Teresa words is of looking down our nose at other people who aren't doing this here, who aren't leading this kind of life, this devout Catholic life. And she very, very wisely says that they can be better than us in many ways in what they do, and we should remember this. That reminds me of where I live now in Spain. When I look at my neighbours, I can't help seeing that they work on Sunday. And that gets up my nose, because I think they shouldn't be working on Sunday, and should be going to church on Sunday, which they're not doing. But on the other hand, I see with my neighbours how very, very kind they are, and how very childlike in many ways, how very hard working. Now, when I arrived here in Spain, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning to this house which was run down, and I tried to drive my car in caravan through the front gates. This is about 1 or 2 in the morning, but the caravan got stuck. My neighbours come out to help me. 2 of them come out to help me, and they worked for about 2 hours to get me out of the caravan, out of the gateway, and then they gave me a bottle of wine for my nerves. I mean, where would you get that? That's very, very great charity. And I noticed my neighbours come up to my door and they give me different things, like a bag of apples, a bag of peaches, they give me some wine, they ask me how I am. They show great childlike interest in what I'm doing. Now, where I come from in Belfast, nobody's interested. I mean, I could have been dead for 10 weeks in the flat. I remember one of my neighbours saying to me, now, if ever you have any trouble, come up to my door and don't hesitate. Another time, my car gets stuck in the field, and my next door neighbour came out with a tractor and piled it out. I offered him money for it, as I would in Ireland, but they actually took it as an insult that they offered money. Down in the chapel, one of the women on St. Patrick's Day baked me Irish bread, which is lovely, So again and again and again, you see real kindness and charity often from people who you may think are godless, but they're, St. Jesus saying here not to think yourself better than anybody else, and that is a real danger of that there, She mentions too about being under obedience. This is important because it helps with the detachment from the world. This is what this is all about. It's becoming a real Catholic, if you like, not being a robot Catholic, not being a box-ticking Catholic, but being a real Catholic. Not out of rules, but out of love, being drawn for love. It's good too to do it out of rules too. I mean, on the one hand, you might say, I have to go to Mass on Sunday because if I don't go to Mass on Sunday, it's a mortal sin. Well, that's all right. That's fine. It's true. It would be a mortal sin not to go to Mass on Sunday. But how much better not to do it just because of rules, but to do it because of love, because you want to go to Mass. And then how much better than that, even again, to do it every day out of love, to go beyond the rules. As St. Augustine says, to love and do what you will. So if you're doing things out of love, you're doing everything right. And now you see the generations set apart. For my parents' generation, a lot of it was rules, not for everyone, but a lot of it was rules and regulations, a kind of fixed world. But now we're in a post-Christian society where people don't even keep the rules, you know. But it's better to keep the rules, at least, even out of fear. At least keep the rules. St. Teresa says at the beginning of this here, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's better to do it out of rules and regulations than not to do it at all. But in our generation, it's even better to do it for something beyond that, to do it for love. And I think that's important too. So it's interesting. It's lovely the way St. Teresa puts things here, you know, the way she puts 7 signs. I forgot she laid it out so clearly. But as you move on more and more in prayer into the later mansions, inevitably you move into a land of mystery where things can't be battened down, nailed down so much as maybe as she's done here in the third mansions, as you'd expect, you know. But even so, as she does move on through the mansions, she does give a lot of good signs there too. So anyway, that's it, the third mansions. Thanks for listening. God bless.